What's up, narrators? This is Morris Bankston, and we are back with another episode of the Narratives Per Possession podcast. And happy NBA draft eve to everyone. Really excited about this episode because today's narrative that we're getting into is, of course, the 2025 NBA draft. And none other to help me with that is I'm excited to have a just I consider him basically to be a guru of all things, sort of like NBA analysis. Uh, and we're gonna bring him up in a second, only because I see this like is disconnected. Okay, we got him now. All right. Without further ado, I want to introduce Mike Gribanov, affectionately known as Grib. Welcome to the pod. Glad to have you on tonight. And yeah, let's talk about the NBA draft.
Yes, thank you so much for having me on. Excited. Like I ever since you came out with the show, I've been like really like I haven't like heard every single episode yet, but like, yeah, I really like what you've done from what I have heard so far. So yeah,
appreciate it. Yeah, and I mean, yeah, create the show to really bring a level of like just real basketball talk about basketball because there's plenty of other outlets that add the extracurriculars. We're just here to talk about hoops.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's what I love personally.
Yeah, well, appreciate it. Yeah, so we got the NBA draft coming up tomorrow, and I feel like there's like so many angles and so many layers that we're definitely going to get into. I figured just to start the conversation off. Let's just start top to bottom, right? So obviously the main event is he's called. Like we know, like 99.99% without a shadow of a doubt, Cooper Flagg's probably going to be the number one draft pick tomorrow. Just what thoughts are on your mind at this point about Flagg and anything? Just hand it over to you. Tell us about Cooper Flagg from your point of view.
Well, I was thinking like, do you think your audience should be like fairly familiar with him, right? Like, I don't want to like do a Cooper Flagg scouting report right now. Like, I feel like everybody knows
just
more. Yeah.
Like he's a known guy, but I don't want to just like completely ignore him. Like any fresh thoughts you have on him, or
Yeah, I mean, a few things. I mean, obviously he's super versatile. I think, like from a statistical perspective, for example, like just like doing queries and that sort of thing. I think maybe he's the most like. He's a guy that will show up on any like realistic query you'll do. Like I do a lot of statistical research and just looking at all the other guys in this draft or even like historical stuff. What's it called? And Flagg is like constantly showing up there, like where I wouldn't even at all expect his name to pop up just because of how versatile he is and how he's so effective in like every category. I was going to look it up, but not a lot of time right now, but yeah, I think he might be like, Bart has kind of like a color coding system for like all the various statistical categories. He might be like green, like, top third in the NCAA for like every single statistical category almost. I don't know if there's been at least, since I've been doing it seriously, like taking it, like doing it like at a professional type of level. Maybe 8 years, a prospect who's been as versatile and kind of been able to, be successful in pretty much every, category that we generally use to, evaluate and measure players from especially statistical lens. There's definitely some like concerns as far as like maybe like half court self creation. Like I was looking at the numbers finishing like off the dribble stuff. Righties tend to have a lot more volume going left because people are going to force you left. But he's really like going right. Had some troubles at Duke, I think, finishing in a half court like self-created shots, and I think that's because like going from like dribble gather into finish, he's kind of a little bit uncomfortable. Like his biomechanical like style is not super like conducive to like quickly gathering and fluidly going into a finish in certain situations. And he's not like as physically dominant as some of like elite prospects with some similar traits like LeBron or somebody like that. But I think what people sometimes underrate with him as far as like the half court scoring is his touch, and especially his touch in like these short range like little jumpers. Doing these like mid post 5'8" short quarter pivot, pump fake, and either fading, leaning over left, right shoulder. That it actually reminds me just that particular part of his game a little bit of like Michael Jordan, Kobe, those types of guys. And I think he doesn't get enough credit for that. But I don't think he'll be like a Kobe or Jordan level of half court self creator. But if you think about like somebody like LeBron, he was never probably even one of the top 10 half court self creators in the league. And obviously he's maybe the greatest player of all time. I think that sometimes gets a little bit overrated as far as, how important that in itself is to, having a superstar outcome.
Yeah. And I would say just from my own observations of seeing Flag in his, his freshman year at Duke, it seems that on the offensive side, when he's in the half court, he's also not like he's not really belaboring the issue as far as like moving the ball either. Like I just think there's a level of court vision he has, especially like the thing I noticed. I'm thinking back to I think it was Duke's Final Four game. He seemed really comfortable just like making his reads out the slot, and ball comes to him. He's finding guys like the opposite corner and just he's not a selfish player at all in that regard. So maybe like I'm just thinking out loud in kind of response to what you're saying. Like maybe he's thinking move the ball equally as much as like finding his own shot at this stage.
Yeah, definitely. And I think like the really interesting combo at this point, like I said, like, Flag and his game has been covered so much is just really like where we would see him as from like a more historical perspective, like relative to some of the recent prospects and like maybe some of the upcoming guys like Wemby or, next year DeBonsa and Boozer and Peterson. Those guys are even like Shea and Halbert in the finals right now. Like how does he fit in with, the current, and future elite players in the league? What do you think? Like, do you think he's like among the, top, like really like elite all-time greats possibly? Or do you think he's more like below that, a lot more likely to just fall below that?
Yes. I think that's a great question. I have to think about that because
it's definitely tough. I agree. Yeah.
It's tough because like I think back to like when when LeBron James was, making his way towards, his draft. I mean, he just had such an unprecedented level of hype behind him. But at the same time, when like, those games those high school games he had on ESPN, like, he was box office. He was delivering every time. And I think Cooper Flag to a degree, I mean, he's done the same thing at Duke. When he's been on, he's been box office. Though aside from I'll see, like I didn't watch a ton of Duke basketball during the season. The one game that I did see live was when Duke played Illinois at Madison Square Garden. That was an eye opener for me, and maybe down the line also like not so much a good eye opener for Kasparis Giaconis. I'm probably mangling his name. But I think what I saw in that was just how prolific of a defender Cooper Flag is. Every time I've seen him in defensive possessions, he really looks like an NFL linebacker to me. And I say that like it's like I played football in my past life. Like there's a attack he has where, especially in the gaps, he finds that ball and he's blowing up actions. I think that's the thing. So like I feel like he'll be a different kind of potentially like all-time great where it won't be because he's coming in and he's like dropping 30 a night. I think he's just going to do like mind-bending plays on both ends of the court every night.
Well, let's do it. Like, do you think, like, say him, Wembanyama, who do you like the most next year? Who's your guy right now out of the three next year?
Between Flag, Wemby, and
whoever your guy, Boozer, AJ Peterson.
Oh, and then so honestly, I have to watch more film on both DeBonsa and Boozer. But I would say comparing Wemby to Flag, I probably lean towards Wemby because there's just some unreal things Wemby's doing. Again, I think I bias a lot on visuals with defense because I suppose like when I think about where the current state of the NBA is,
right.
There's a grain of salt that I have to give to anything offense at this point because it's just like there's some factors that come into play with how the NBA is officiated how the game is played versus like seeing it at the NCAA level or FIBA. Yeah, I would lean towards Wemby right now just because the length he has and the instincts he has and the mobility he has as a defender, it's just like that. It's also otherworldly. And I suppose it's like Flag's defensive abilities, there's just power and explosion that I haven't seen in somebody else in a long time. But with Wemby, the dude's 7'4", and he's just like he's defending the rim and closing out the corners. Like it's in like a step. It's crazy stuff.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. On the one hand, like I want to say that like physical talent is not as as predominant of a trait, in prospect evaluation as it was maybe like 10 years ago. And sometimes people overlook that. But with Wemby, it's so outstanding and so on another level like we've never seen before. That yeah, I definitely agree. And also the interesting question to me is like we just saw like Shea win the championship, obviously, and then we had the Nuggets, we had the Bucks. Do you think it's like a new era? Do you think Wemby is gonna win like 4 of the next 7 titles or something, or or whatever? Him and Flag are in the finals every year against each other, or do you think it's like a new era where we probably won't see that again? That's what kind of really interests me with like looking at Flag right now.
I think the balance. I think for sure the balance of power is changing in the West. Where like Wemby's going to be in the middle of it. Certainly OKC with Shea, and really just I think the machine that OKC has built is going to be in it. I'm becoming very skeptical of seeing another dynasty in this decade, just because of like. It just seems like every time like we see the dominant performance, it's almost like some sort of hangover where it's like we finish up with NBA finals, and I feel like this has been the last 5 NBA finals, like amazing performances. You think that champ is like locked in for like the next 5 years.
Exactly.
It's like it just every season something comes into play where either like the team is unraveled for some reason or the devastating injury hits. The way I remember, the way perhaps you remember, the way a lot of NBA fans remember, like dynasties evolving. I just don't know if I don't know if that environment exists anymore.
Yeah,
because of a variety of factors.
Yeah, for sure. No, I agree. I think it's definitely. I think a big reason is just because there's so much skill and talent because how much money there's in the game. So not only from even the player's perspective, but like coaching, scouting, there's so much work put into all of this and so much money and effort. So what's it called? It's just the differences between all these elite guys are so tiny that you have like these groups of like teams, obviously like Thunder or Nuggets or the Celtics that are like really, really good, and maybe they're even as good as some of the past all-time great teams. But there's been kind of so much effort and thought put into it now, and everybody has like really smart coaches, smart trainers, effective scouting, that it's really hard for a single team to just kind of get ahead of everybody else and get a huge edge on everybody else for several years. But historically in the NBA, that's never been the case outside like maybe mid-late 70s, and that's kind of considered like a transitionary and weaker period of the league. So I kind of wonder, because it's not like the league is actually weaker, but I think the lack of like like this like the 90s Bulls, like they were like the Beatles, or even the Heat with LeBron in the 2010s, but we don't have that team that everybody, every like my wife who doesn't watch basketball, is gonna know Michael Jordan, LeBron James, but she doesn't know like Shea or somebody like that, Yeah, so yeah, I wonder how that's gonna affect the league, or if maybe we're kind of worrying about it more than we should, and then Wemby's just gonna win 7 straight or something.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing I've come back to a few times, like on this topic of like, where's the league heading right now, and like, who's going to be on top. There's certainly a dynamic in play where, at least in my opinion, the mandate and the case for expansion, it's pretty clear at this point. I think there's just so much talent going around also where it seems like there isn't a team that's been able to like really corner the league or like just get a monopoly on like we're gonna be the team to beat for the next 5 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I really thought that was like the interesting combo with Flag at this point. But it's interesting. You said, first of all, I really like what you said about the defense, like the gap defense. I had that in my notes right here. That's, and the perfect way to put it, how he's like almost the aggressor on defense. Like he's the one that's the aggressor. Yeah. But I was going to say, damn, it just slipped out of my mind. No, you were saying with the, because I asked you the Flag Wemby question, and you did answer towards Wemby, but you kind of said like it's you seem to imply that it's pretty close between the two still.
I would give a slight edge to Wemby, because I think there's just some unique attributes.
But slight edge. It's not like you wouldn't say the difference here.
Yeah, I don't think. Yeah, I mean it's a slight edge, but like I think Flag could easily close that, and depending on the trajectory of like just how things develop with Flag, presumably in Dallas, he may quickly eclipse Wemby as well, because I think the thing when I think about Wemby's defense, it's just the sheer fear he's striking as like a shot deterrent. Like, there's that famous clip that's gone around more than enough of like him single-handedly stopping a 3-on-1 break.
Yeah. And I think people underrate that, like, as a skill set, how valuable that is. Like, that's a superstar skill if you're like that good at it, like Wemby.
Yeah. And so it's, I think it's going to take some time for Flag. I mean, Flag is 18 still, or 18, 19 or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't expect him to just come in and lock up dudes right off the bat in the NBA, because no rookie really does that. So, and I suppose that's another factor. It's just like, I mean, Wemby's got 2 seasons under his belt at this point. So,
right. Well, he's like 2.5 years older, I believe.
Yeah.
I mean, Flag has some pretty impressive moments like on ball, but I think like his real go-to, like you said, like in the gaps, like flying around the court, coming out of nowhere to swat a shot, like almost like a Giannis-esque defensive style a little bit. What was I gonna say? Oh yeah, and then the other thing, like I'm sorry, like I came in the show, I was supposed to talk how give my expertise in the draft, but I'm just interested like in your like thoughts, because you watch the NBA, I'm sure a lot more than me. So what's it called? One thing that I've been thinking a lot about lately, especially with the Thunder and Pacers in the finals and stuff, I guess Shea is a pretty like heavy, high volume, go-to guy for the Thunder for sure. But still, it kind of seems like the league is starting to slightly move away from like the heliocentric type of players like Luka and Trey that were so like kind of popular in the coaching conversations, stuff like that, maybe in like 2019, 2020, where of course the stars, there's going to be always superstars that drive these teams. But I think, do you think it's becoming like kind of more, less, in style, and maybe teams are realizing maybe it's not as valuable to do that a lot of times, and it's better to lean towards a superstar like a Hallie who really moves the ball quick, makes these great decisions. Not exactly like him per se, but he's definitely very unique. But like, do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. And when I think about the Helio Ball call out, it's a good one, because I mean, if just purely my opinion, I don't know if Helio Ball really. I should say, like, this is how I've viewed Helio Ball in the past, and I know I've written it about somewhere. I've always viewed Helio Ball as a good mechanism. Let's say, like, if you're trying to switch the gear from, if you're like, a basement dwelling type team, to perhaps you finally got some talent on your NBA roster, and you're really trying to like level up and climb up the rungs of like playoff seeding, Helio Ball is a fine way to go about that if you have a credible Helio Ball focal point, right? Like we've seen it with Harden's MVP seasons in Houston. Obviously, Luka in Dallas was the poster child for that. I would even argue like Luka probably is the first Helio Ball player to truly break through to serious title contention.
Yeah.
Because I think like Dallas,
Russ. I thought you were gonna say he's like the the first super Helio Ball player, but I was gonna say Russ. But yeah, as far as title contention.
Yeah, I mean, and then you had those seasons with Russ as well, where he kept OKC afloat
But yeah, he
where
wasn't contending. You're right. Yeah, definitely.
yeah,
Yeah,
but it's like you never view any of those Helio Ball teams as like, oh, they're gonna overtake the Golden State Warriors and win it all. Like, it's just like, you knew the limits of like at some point, great Helio team's gonna face a great team, and great team's gonna win.
Yeah, I mean, because I understand like the philosophy of Helio Ball is like this is our best guy, so let's just get him as much touches and let him do as much as possible. But at the same time, I do feel like it kind of, first of all, it limits your teammates' kind of comfort and like rhythm to some degree. I feel like, and then on the defensive end, I think it like makes the superstars just like so much toll on them offensively that almost very rarely do those guys have a positive impact on the defensive end of any type, which I still to this day believe Luka, if healthy physically, I think could be a pretty good defender. But it's just because how his style is offensively, it's just impossible to have that much effort and to give a consistent on a consistent basis.
Yeah, I mean, Helio, I think it's challenging because when it comes to playoff ball, right? The secret sauce of NBA playoff ball is like it's the adjustments, it's the counters, and if you're going to go into a 7-game series and the opponent knows that like basically it's either I'm going to stop you from dropping 40 or I'm going to stop you from making all your reads. If the defense can like confidently stop one or the other, I give the edge, I give the advantage to that team versus. Another team I'll throw in the mix, like I think is underappreciated in terms of Helio Ball conversation. Really, the entirety of the process Sixers, whether it's Embiid for sure, but even like I thought, when they still had Simmons, that was sort of the limitation of like, the Sixers with Ben Simmons running point when he was in his like prime state is there's a finite limitation to. Just having this one person be the ball dominant one, and they're supposed to like distribute everything across the floor. Basketball really isn't, to me, it's just like you can't you can only do so much quarterbacking as a primary option in NBA basketball.
Yeah, I mean, I'll show my cards. Like, I'm pretty anti-Helio. I'm like that's why like my big thing why I love how Burden and like how I praise him so much is because I think he kind of is gonna like push philosophically teams to kind of go towards more ball movement and quick decisions and that sort of style, which in my opinion is both preferable and more enjoyable as a fan.
100%. I mean, it's fundamental basketball. Actually, this is a fun detour. We'll have to have this one. Like we have to put a pin in this one and bring this back because I get you're hitting on some pay dirt with me. Without getting too much more off the rails, but that was fun off the rails. We talked about Flag. Obviously, in a lot of people's minds, like 1B of this 2025 draft is Dylan Harper. I actually am like, honestly, if there wasn't Flag, like I think clearly Harper would be number one. But even throughout the season, I found that I was actually more intrigued and perhaps more excited about Harper than I was with Flag. Perhaps because it's like when it comes to the NBA, as KD famously says, a wings league. So in a lot of ways, like as exciting as Flag is for me, I don't know if Flag's going to be the last great NBA wing for the foreseeable future. Whereas Dylan Harper, he's a big, sizable guard, and I do have a bias about big guards. Like when I was coming of age with basketball, like Magic Johnson was still the best player in the league. And so it's just like when I think of guard and like the best kind of guard, if I see like a 6'5" plus guard and they can attack or get downhill and they can move the ball, like those things pop to me. And I think that's a lot of what Harper has popped out to me throughout this season. So like, where are you with Dylan Harper and what? Yeah.
I mean, you brought up Magic Johnson. I was going to ask you about do you remember Ron Harper? But obviously, if you remember Magic, you must remember Harper.
Oh
yeah, yeah. So because if you remember, like Ron's his dad's trajectory in the NBA, he kind of came in. I don't remember if he was like a second pick, but he got picked pretty high. And I just looked up his numbers on Basketball Reference. So through his first, I think it was like 8 seasons up until like 30, he averaged like something like 17, 18 points per 70 possessions. And for that era, that was pretty decent numbers. And he was more of like a go-to guy. But really, what people, of course, will remember him, especially nowadays, is the Jordan, being Jordan's teammate, playing as that big point guard next to him. And
Yep.
I kind of see a lot of that in like Dylan's future, where he'll probably come in and be like used as primary option. And I know the Spurs obviously have Wemby already and even Fox, but they may try to see what they how much they could push his upside, as far as a creator and playmaker and stuff like that. But I really think eventually, whether it was Spurs or elsewhere, he's gonna settle more into like a tertiary role. But I don't mean that as kind of disrespectful or anything. I think he'll fit into that really well. And I think that the way he develops into that player may be like not what we currently expect based on his college output. Like for example, defensively, I think he has quite a bit more upside than what we've seen to this point.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, the film I've seen from him, his defense, that pops out to me as well, and that's just like there's a scarcity. I personally feel that there's a scarcity of that for the guard position in the NBA. Which is why there's just been.
What do you mean by that? Like, there's not enough good defenders, or
at the guard position, like the combination of sizable guard that you can trust on defense, and at the same time can consistently carry like an offensive load. It seems like that's what I see in Harper's game at this point.
Oh, like two-way.
Just the two-way at the guard position, because there's I think in the NBA, there's just been, again, I'm speaking specifically for guards, there has been like this growth of like a middle-class guard market where it's like, if they can get 20 and be a serviceable help side defender, like that's acceptable in today's NBA, right? Whereas there used to be a time where like you couldn't be a guard and not play defense to an NBA level. Right. That's my point. And individually,
yeah. I think that's more because of the rule changes, in my opinion. Because the way before it was so much more, emphasized on individual matchups and who could, kind of. I mean, I guess we do a lot of what is it called, trying to find the mouse in the house and all of that nowadays. But definitely in the past, that was like everything is like just whoever had the best one matchup in a game would often be the winner. So that was so important. And then of course with hand checking back then also, that was important to like making individual on ball defense more valuable as well, in my opinion. But I think there's some good guard defenders as far as like just thinking of the Thunder with Wallace and Caruso, for example.
Yeah. Yes, for sure. Wallace and Caruso. What I would add to that though is like you don't scouting reports like that. Caruso isn't going to probably show up on anybody's scouting report for like
the other end.
Caruso, right?
Like and
that's my point. Where it's like, from what I've seen from Harper in his season at Rutgers, he looks like a guard where it's like he's going to be stout on the perimeter. He's going to be a bulldog in a point of attack possession. And at the same time, he's going to get with the ball in his hand. He'll make the read, or also like he has no problem just like taking you off the dribble. And I think that's the thing that intrigues me about him, is that he's going to be, I think pretty dynamic offensively, and at the same time he's going to give like a level of defense where it's like, I guess like the standard bearer for that, the closest one to me, like to be able to do it both defensively and offensively as a guard right now, it really is Anthony Edwards.
Okay. I see. I don't watch enough NBA, so I can't super comment on Ant's defense right now, because like he wasn't an amazing defender in Warriors, but I have no doubts that he might have gotten a lot better.
Yeah, I mean, I think that also So certainly, I don't know if his college tape or his scouting would have shown any of that back then, but the evolution of Anthony Edwards over the last few seasons in the NBA, he really has elevated his game to where like he's a superior two-way player now. And I will say actually, so full disclosure, I'm a lifelong Bulls fan. So the Ron Harper Bulls years are very familiar. And then at the same time, like I appreciate Ron Harper's Cavs years, even though like that was the rival back then.
Yeah.
And, I mean, Ron Harper.
I like those Cavs teams from the like late 80s, early 90s. They were fun teams. Yeah.
Yeah. He had hops.
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways, I think that there's probably something to Dylan Harper's pedigree there, right? Because just having his father like in his corner, I'm sure like there's a ton of wisdom and experience that he's picked up from his dad, and I see it in his game for sure. In terms of like just like it's definitely the defensive side, like he wears the Harper name well. I'll give him that.
That's interesting. I kind of agree with you, but I think like what I heard like in like general perception is that Harper's defense is not terrible. Like people aren't saying he sucks on defense, but like it hasn't been like emphasized as like a big strength for him from other people. But I agree with it. I don't think he's necessarily shown like some great defensive acumen while at Rutgers, but just from the tools, his attitude, and he's obviously a young guy, and he had this again really heavy load at Rutgers as far as offensive volume. So yeah, I think the defensive upside, if and most likely he will in the NBA, be able to let Wemby carry some of the load, Fox carry some of the load. So now he could, focus a lot more on the defensive end. And I think we'll see a lot more success from him on that end in the future. I was gonna say, do you go to a lot of like college games and stuff? Like, because when I saw Harper in person when I went to an event, like that was like a big eye opener for me because he's enormous in person and he like really well built and sturdy. I actually think he might be able to play like some small ball 4 in the future.
I wouldn't be surprised. I didn't get a chance to go to any college games this year, and
or high school.
Yeah, I didn't get to. I mean, the challenge for me is I have like 2 young children, so.
Trust me, I know. I have one, but she's like 5.
Yeah. So it's like, I mean, then the challenge is just being able to get out. But I didn't get to see anything in person. And the challenge. I live in New York City, so I was really weighing going over to Rutgers, but it's just like driving to New Jersey.
Yeah. I hear about that from the New York people.
It's like I really was hoping somehow like Rutgers was going to do something like MSG or like Barclays, but like they didn't do anything. And,
Yeah. Well, yeah, but and I was gonna say not to take us away. By the way, I wanted to bring this back real quick, just to because I like kind of took that conversation with the heliocentricity. I did definitely take us a little off course, but the reason I brought that up because I think Flag he doesn't really fit like the heliocentric kind of archetype of superstar, but I do think he fits like this more what is it called egalitarian offensive approach. With like. The Pacers or somebody like that, or even the Celtics last year to some degree. So with like kind of looking at Harper from that lens, one thing I've been kind of researching lately is the effect of like kind of weight and I don't want to say body type, but just, how like power physically could and stuff like that really projects into the league. And one thing at first that I found was, especially for guards, that guards with a little bit more weight tend to do a lot better defensively, and I think that kind of gets underrated sometimes because people will talk about like mirroring and agility in defensive situations for guards a lot, but strength is really important for perimeter defense as well, and like kind of keeping your spot planting and those like short space bumps and getting guys off their course and stuff like that, even if there's no hand checking per se, but still that stuff I think is very important. But so I was getting ready to say that like, I think, being kind of like a wider, more built perimeter player is like pretty underrated. But then I'm watching the finals that we're talking about right now, and who are the best guys? It's Halliburton, Shea, Chet, so yeah, I kind of just, I don't know. It's kind of an incomplete project that I'm still kind of working on, but like, do you have any thoughts on that? And then like, do you think how important is like kind of body type and like physical composition and power in particular to like anticipating how players will end up?
I look at the I think what is the word? The corollary I offer to what you said, because I think that is I actually think that's an interesting premise. Um, I'll go back to again. My athlete experience is as a football player, but I try not to be of like the meathead Acho Emmanuel Acho kind of crazy stuff. Like I played football, but like I love basketball, so it's like. But I see I see the contra I see the what is it the contrasting fundamentals involved, and I can
What
say
position do you play in football?
defensive end, like nothing to brag about at all, but like and actually, so this is, and I'll tell it this way because I think it will speak to what you're saying, right? When I first started playing football in high school, I actually played initially outside linebacker, but what I learned is I didn't have the lateral movement to be an effective defender in space, and like I could, what I did learn about it though is when you defend in space in football, it's very much comparable to like help defense, where it's like you need to be competent and aware of like angles, how you position yourself, and like to that point you're making, like having more weight, having a wider base. I would, yeah, I would bet money that is a helpful benefit or attribute for a guard to have in defense, because basketball is all about space. Offense wants to create space, defense wants to take away space, and so if you have perhaps, I mean, weight certainly is a factor in it, but a lot of people refer to it, I think, is like you want to have a strong base, right? Like you want to be able to position yourself in way.
Well, it's actually strength, right? But weight is just, we don't have a stat for strength, unless we, I don't know, like make them do exercises of different types and count or something. But yeah, like weight is like a quick basic way to kind of estimate.
Yeah, but the weight, yeah, because you like I think the key thing, like to the point that you're making, I think is a great point, is you want to have a defender who is going to be able to hold their position, not get bumped off, not get knocked out, and at the same time they still have the mobility and the agility to stick with their assignment.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, but do you have any thoughts, like, because this is kind of like what got me like kind of interested and compelled a bit with like realizing like Shea and Tyrese, like these were in Ched in their draft, certainly like among the lottery type of guys, like they were like like if I had to choose one guy who had some questions because maybe they're too thin, will they be strong enough? Can they gain enough strength, and or like is it going to be a problem with injuries and stuff like that? And obviously they've all had really, really good outcomes. And then on the other hand, I know some people really value kind of thinner guys because they believe that at at a younger age those guys like tend to not have fully developed as far as their balance and kind of ability to turn their hips and stuff, because that they're so thin, they're not quite strong enough to fully execute all these movements. And obviously gaining muscle is something the NBA has mastered pretty well for guys. So once you get that really thin guy into the league and put him in the training a regimen and so forth, they're often according to certain scouts I've talked to, they often have considerable gains as far as their athletic ability.
That's interesting. Yeah, I think my opinion, my point of view on like weight, it seems that I don't know if it's weight that is as important as the functional strength. And in some way, like I will say in general, like the points you're making, I do agree with them. The challenge is like I'm not. I feel like I feel like we need a trainer, like, because it's like I have ideas in my head as far as like what you're saying and how I want to articulate it, but I feel like I lack the trainer vocabulary. There's something that you're definitely on to something. I would say that.
I'm probably not explaining it fully either because I'm not a trainer either,
But yeah, no, but it would be cool, and like certainly as you continue to research that, because I think the things like thinking out loud in response to what you're saying, like you're hitting on the attributes of like what are the attributes that could profile into perhaps projecting an optimal defender.
Yeah, or even more generally speaking, but yeah, definitely defense. I think is more the focus in this particular conversation.
Yeah, no, that's a good one. You're dropping some jewels, man. That's a good one. I like that. Just to get back to the draft a bit. So
the reason I was saying that, I'm sorry. Again, it sounds like I'm like taking us off course, but because obviously Harper is like a kind of wider body player, and I think there's like among a certain corner of scouts, there's like a tendency to kind of devalue that because there's like a belief that guys that kind of depend a lot on their strength at lower levels that as guys catch up when they get older, they're going to lose a lot of that advantage. So I think that's like a critique we often, especially in the past, would hear for guys like Harper, but I think that's kind of lessened recently. But at the same time, I'm like, I'm kind of like trying to figure out the way to like, yeah, there's some truth to that, but to what degree? Because, we do see Shea and Chet and Howie being so, successful. But at the same time, we saw like so many people devalue Desmond Bane in the draft because he was like a wider guy. And people said, he doesn't have the right body type for an NBA wing, blah, blah, blah. And, obviously they were very wrong. He turned out quite well. So, yeah, it's just like I'm trying to like kind of think how figure out how to weigh out these different viewpoints properly. And I think Harper is an interesting example of that because he definitely uses his strength a lot and in a really effective way, but it's not going to be a problem once he starts playing against NBA guys that are grown men and
I'm glad you said that because I think I'm for sure going to make a memo note for once Harper gets into the league, that's a good lens to potentially view Harper's defensive possessions. Like how much of a learning curve is he going to actually have once he's on the floor against NBA players? Because like the strength dynamic that you're talking about, a stronger person like. He can get in there. He can, hold his own. I'm just thinking theoretically, like he should be able to get into possessions. He should be able to help or get on the ball and hold his own without, get too much rookie learning curve. I mean, I'm sure there'll be some, but that added strength is going to make a difference, especially like with the playoffs that we just finished. Where I think most people would agree that we just had a renaissance in physicality in NBA basketball again.
Yeah, for playoffs for sure. Yes.
Yeah. If that's going to stick in the regular season, like this may be just the perfect time, perfect place for Dylan Harper.
Yeah. Well, they need to cut the regular season in half after these injuries, and if they want physicality, which I'd like to see too. I think they just got to cut some games out. But of course, every game you get those juicy ticket sales as the billionaire owner.
Yeah, man, that's the brick wall right there. Like I know people are getting that boat more and more, but just like where's the revenue going to come from? Then that's the tricky part. If anything, the league probably would want to add more games to the regular season if they had it their way.
Well, I think if I agree with you, but if I had to like play like devil's advocate, I would say like what's it called? Because there'd be less games than the players could play every game, there wouldn't be rest games. So like those games where fans may be, kind of not as excited to get tickets and would be lackluster. Now you'd have a sellout every time, hypothetically, because, you wouldn't need like as much rest games and that kind of, those dog day February games where nobody's really trying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I hear you. Yeah. So, yeah, we talked about Flag. We talked about Harper. Not that I considered. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was going to ask you about Harper because you said what's it called? He's basically like a 1B to you. Like you think him and Flag are basically like same tier, or
not exactly same tier, but in terms of I would say like to the way I view the first round in general. There's Flag, there's Harper, and then there's the rest of the lottery.
Okay, yeah, I think I'd agree. I think Flag is in his own tier, then Harper is also in his own tier, right? And then
but I say 1B where it's like 1B is a sub to 1.
Right. Okay. Because I thought you were because it's maybe I misheard you, but it sounded like you were saying like almost interchangeable to you. Maybe you slightly prefer flag, but yeah, I was interested.
I have well, so is a few nuanced biases in my view of Harper. One is like being a lifelong Bulls fan, being a fan of his dad.
Yeah.
So there's that. But then also, I mean, quite frankly, for the current day Bulls, I would like that would have been my dream scenario. Somehow Dylan Harper gets on the Bulls, because I'm not, most people know my coverage of the Chicago Bulls this past season. I was pretty critical of the whole Josh Giddey experience.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Hope Giddey is working out well, and he's going to get extended by all reports. But I don't need to go too deep into the Bull side of it. Long story short, there's a lot that I liked about Harper for sentimental and selfish Bulls reasons.
Yeah. What pick do they have right now? The Bulls?
12th pick.
Oh, 12th pick. So they're taking KJ, right? That's like, is it?
I mean, that's definitely in the wheelhouse because the head of basketball ops for
right,
Bulls,
exactly.
He is also from Lithuania. So
yeah, and he took Buzelis last year. I think he's just like, and I know there's like a big Lithuanian diaspora, right, in Illinois.
Yeah. I mean, it's a community. Yeah, so I mean, Buzelis, he grew up in the suburbs of Chicago.
Yeah. I remember that. Yeah. Would you take a bet? What's it called? KJ versus the field? I'm not trying to bet you, but I'm just saying hypothetically. like how high of a chance do you think it is? I'm basically asking.
Oh, I think if I think about if I had to project what I expect the Bulls to do, I think the short list is basically wild card, KJ, and Yegor Denham.
Who's wild card?
It was something I think because that's also the Bulls front office has that MO where they do these wild card picks. I mean, Patrick Williams, unfortunately, I think that was a left field pick. Dalen Terry,
I didn't mind Terry, but I see what you're saying.
So it could be any of that, but so well, we talked about Flag, we talked about Harper. I want to talk about Ace Bailey, not to suggest or imply that somehow he's the number 3 after Harp, Flag, and Bailey, but I mean, there's just kind of firestorm might be a strong word, but I'm just gonna go with that. There's just been a lot of Ace Bailey discussion and what's going on with him in the workouts or the workouts he hasn't done. Where are you at with Ace Bailey? What do you think about him?
Well, if we're gonna just stick to the scouting, I'm not a big fan at all, and I expect them to drop even before all this. I think the NBA's kind of caught on to these sort of less high awareness players that are not as quick decision makers and stuff like that. So I think it's half a decade, 2025 right now. I think we're hitting another new era within the league, with Wemby, Chet. I mean, Chet too sure, but Cooper Flag, the guys next year. And I think the way the league drafts is going to start to change a little and, continue to progress for the better, hopefully. And but as far as the stuff with, him not doing workouts and stuff, I definitely think the agency could have done and definitely should have done a better job. But it also felt like the reporting on this was so over the top and everywhere. I can't help but wonder because, Ace's agent is Omar Cooper, who's Sharif's dad, Cooper's dad. And, he's not some big, CAA or Wasserman or whatever guy. He's just, Sharif Cooper's dad. So I feel maybe not to say it's any of the agencies I just mentioned whatsoever, but some, one of the bigger agencies may have some kind of issue with, he's trying to encroach into our territory and kind of putting out a lot of this stuff into the, atmosphere. So I would just say when you hear reports like this, especially, that are so critical of a certain party, always think about, who has, something to gain from, really, giving this information to the media.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, there's always two sides to a story, and especially with the media things, like somebody made a decision that story should have got the light of day. So yeah, what's the motive behind it? Who has something to gain from it? I think that's a great point.
Well, it's not just even if it was one story, but it's like, I was at one group chat where the people were talking about it, and then they're like posting like every like big reporters posting something. What's it called? Ace Bailey's agencies didn't schedule work. Oh, his agent told him to say this. Oh, it's like, what's going on here? Like, where's all this coming from? Like. But that's being said, I'm not like excusing Omar Cooper. He has not done a good job in this pre-draft process by any stretch. But yeah, like some of it is a little bit over the top. I just don't think Ace is that good of a prospect to begin with. So this drop was almost like natural once the NBA kind of got a better feel for his game. Obviously he could he has some great athletic traits, impressive shot maker. There's some defensive upside, but as far as like a top 3 pick to be really excited about, I don't think that's really realistically in the cards.
Yeah, and I think that's a good reason to expect that. Actually, this ties back to the earlier points. We were talking about the evolution of NBA offense. I mean, to some degree, it seems like every NBA team, if they haven't already, especially after what we just saw in this NBA Finals, I think every team's going to want to have some flavor of a team concept within their offensive game plan. Not that even like being the tough two maker, the tough shot maker was something that was like that well like promoted or sought after, I think, in the last 15 years of NBA. But like that is like a phase of the game that continues to just like get hammered out of like being valued. Like seems like every season. I mean, I can say that also as a Bulls fan, where I think to a degree unfairly, like Zach LaVine just continued to sort of like get this bad rap about his game as if like he wasn't an efficient like shot maker, and he was. He had certainly a appreciation for the mid range, perhaps to his detriment, but like this whole thing about like tough twos or like wanting to live in the mid range, there's a time for it. But like to make that your foundation, I think that is going to be a challenge for Ace Bailey, because that's just like when you get into a high leverage moment or a 7-game series. Yes, you need that tough two making, but that's going to probably be at the end of the clock or like in the game. Like that isn't going to be what you start the game plan off. That isn't what you're going to want to do for the first like 12 minutes of the game. Like it's going to be a team concept. You're going to need to find advantages and hunt. You're going to need to find advantages, like find your mismatches.
Right.
You just can't settle for like mid range.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. It's not like if you only shot him when the clock is winding down or something. Okay, sure, but he tends to go to that shot a lot, even in just regular sets or whatever. What was I gonna say? Oh yeah, and I think like the quick decision making is also like a really big part of it, like just moving the ball, like recognizing situations really quickly in the offensive end.
Mm-hmm.
I do think like he could be a pretty like decent like 3-and-D guy down the line, but I definitely understand like some of his responses in interviews, how teams are kind of worried. They're like, yeah, like we want him like to be like an off-ball 3-and-D guy, but this guy thinks he's Michael Jordan or whatever.
Yeah, that's a challenge. And I mean, I don't know personally. I don't know his agency personally. Sounds like those are just he has to decide what kind of player he wants to be in the NBA. It sounds like ultimately. But I want to ask you that question because like when I look at Ace Bailey, when I look at his attributes and just his profile, like I at least have this idea about Ace Bailey where it's like. He probably can develop if he views himself as like this like super dominant number one guy. If he wants to be the number one guy, he probably can be that. But given his age and given the physical attributes he has, why not just like start off on just like your rookie season, those first 2 seasons of your contract, like just really lock in on learning NBA defense and being great at NBA defense so that you can just be on the floor all the time.
Yeah, and I mean, to be fair to him, he has made some like good statements about like how much the defensive development does matter to him. And I'll say like just thinking on a couple of, like recent players like Jonathan Kuminga or even Gigi Jackson, like there was a lot kind of similar-ish criticism toward them coming out, and both have done a fairly decent job of like adjusting to more supporting role, and for younger guys both have had some relative success. Like if Ace turned out like that, it wouldn't be terrible, but definitely like saying like he's some top tier top 3 pick and he's gonna be perennial all-star, I just don't really see that in the cards realistically. But hey, who knows? Definitely it's very projection is very tricky and could definitely be wrong. I'm not like claiming to be 100% correct on this. I saw what's it called? Did you release your big board to the public? Can I talk about it? Because I
Oh no, actually, yeah, no, go for it. I haven't. I have not released it to the public yet, but yeah, I do want to do that. But actually, yeah, I figured that would be a good thing to say for the pod here. So yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I was just gonna say you had Knipple third, right? Is that right? Or
yeah, I did. So I put Knipple third. I have just personally been like ever since the Final Four. Like I have been a fan. I think like Colin Knipple just impressed me in that Final Four run or getting to the Final Four, where I probably wasn't paying much to Colin Knipple in like regular season NCAA, but when he got to the tournament, I think the things that popped out to me, it was seeing the possibilities of what he could be as a motion shooter, because I think it's always a valuable skill in the NBA. But then also just like you see a motor in him, and he doesn't look like he's going to be like necessarily the most physically imposing defender, but he gives effort. And I just think he looks like the kind of player where he could plug himself into like real NBA minutes pretty quickly and actually do something of impact. And I suppose like that's why he's going to 3 for me, is like I think he's more NBA ready, and perhaps it also like I could see like I probably haven't watched as much VJ Edgecombe as other people, but from what I see from Knipple, I think he like the Sixers should really be looking at him.
Yeah. No, I'm agreeing with you. I love Knipple personally, like especially from an ITES perspective, because I'm just a big fan of like, again, as I keep talking about, like quick decisions, moving the ball, like like high awareness players, even on both ends. I remember this was I went to Pongos. I don't know if you're aware. It's like a big like kind of camp event for top high school players when he was there a couple of years ago. And he was like the guy that as soon as he stepped on the court, he's instantly like telling everybody, "Oh, they're about to cut back door. Watch this rotate over here. Oh, help side right here." And like even on the defensive, like he called every like action before it happened for the other team, and that really opened my eyes that like even on the defensive end, like not something he's really known for per se, but he's just just a student of the game to such a high level that to me that's a really really positive indicator to go with. Of course, he's like a consistent 90% free throw shooter, low 40s, 3-point shooter on extremely high volume, going back to his AAU days. And like people will talk about like how his 3-pointers off the dribble at Duke have been pretty bad, but it was only like I think 20 something attempts if I remember right off the top of my head. But he has like
he wasn't high volume, right? Yeah.
Off the catch, he was high volume, but I'm saying off the dribble, he didn't have a ton of 3-point attempts to do.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Yeah, but and he didn't shoot well. He was like 3 out of 21 or something. But then if you go back to like EYBL stuff, there's like in like 15, 16, 17 EYBL together, it's like 80 or 93-point attempts off the dribble, and he's like almost like 40%, I think, or something off the dribble. So yeah, I just think that like combination of skills is like so valuable today, and kind of like where the game is really going. And what I talked about earlier, how the weight could be kind of like a positive indicator for like perimeter defenders. That actually originally the idea came from for looking at Khan and his defense, and how while he definitely has some shortcomings as far as mobility and vertical explosiveness and stuff like that. I think his strength and like I said, awareness could cover up hopefully some of that for him. What do you think? Like, do you see him as like a guard or more of like a forward purely, or
Yeah, I think I find myself more and more subscribing to that edge of like your position is who you guard, and trying to visualize Khan in the NBA. He may end up to me slotting in is like a three in the NBA because I don't know if he's gonna have the mobility to keep up with NBA guards on the perimeter. Like that's just my gut feel from what I've seen from him. So I would expect him to be more like a three,
Mhm.
but more like I guess like a tweener kind of between a guard and a three.
Yeah, oh yeah,
Leaning towards three, just because like I don't think, I'm not gonna expect him to guard like an NBA point guard or like
absolutely right.
the top tier two
Yeah.
guards in the league.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think we're really like overall like on a similar page with Khan. I think it's interesting because while I love like I test wise Khan, I look at obviously statistical projection a lot. And statistically, the guy that really does well on a lot of like models and like projection based statistics and stuff is KJ Kasparis. I don't know how to pronounce his last name either. Jacochonis, I think.
Jaconis, I believe.
Draconis. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he does really well in a lot of those, and I could see like where maybe like some of that is kind of coming from and how he could develop potentially. But yeah, I just watching the film, I don't really see it as much with KJ. So I'm just curious how those two will develop in the future and how like that will help me adjust, how to weigh stats and my own eye test relative to each other.
Yeah, the KJ knock I know he had a lot of just like being a Bulls fan. There's like a line eye overlap in that as well when you talk to a
Right.
lot of Bulls fans. So like everybody like I think most Illini fans were like they're just getting to like some points of frustration with his turnovers.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's the thing. Yeah. Like this past year, like the thing that the most has kind of come to the forefront is something I value a lot. Is like, yeah, not turning the ball over and, creating turnovers on the other end as well. That was kind of already something I had a lot of value in, but definitely, yeah, like, not committing like live ball turnovers because not only do you lose possession, those obviously often lead to like transition opportunities.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, going back to again that that Duke Illinois game that I watched, like that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, he was like red meat in an ocean, like uh, like every possession KJ had on the perimeter. Duke's defense was collapsing and just getting like free run to the rim.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah,
What do you think of Will Riley?
he like I have to go back. I have to watch more on Will Riley because
Okay,
like
sure.
I think like honestly, Will Riley completely flew under the radar for me this season because there's just so much like hype that KJ was getting. So like
Mm,
anytime I had opportunities to see something from Illinois, like if I was paying attention to Illinois, usually it was just see like what's KJ doing because I felt like there was like a good month where like KJ was really riding the hype train to
yeah.
where they were talking about like, oh, KJ might be top five.
Right. Yeah, I mean, to his credit, I mean, by the end of the season, it looked like Riley might have been the better player, to be honest. But at the same time, I noticed a trend that for especially like international prospects, they tend to need like an extra year to really acclimate to
Mhm.
the U.S. game at times. Like if you think about France, he left as a sophomore, or like in UCLA, Daymar, like how he struggled as a freshman, now doing a lot better as a sophomore. And I mean, they're not coming to my head right now, but there's like several examples like this. So I could definitely see like KJ, in another year in US. Obviously, he'll be a rookie again in the NBA, but maybe start to figure some things out. The culture language barrier becomes less, of a mystery to him, and so forth.
Yeah, actually, so I want to get your thought on this because like specifically with the international players, and this kind of plays into the 25 draft as well. Um, it seems like there's a impact finally being realized in NCAA ball with NIL, the name,
Yeah.
image, and likeness money, to where now all of a sudden it's drawing in like you know high level international players into the college programs. And I can say also my own for full awareness. I'm a Purdue alumni, so I know Purdue brought in Omer Mayer from Israel, and
Okay.
and then Oliver Quaife. I probably don't know his last name yet, but but you're starting to see these big, you're starting to see these international players that otherwise would still be playing international league ball or potentially coming into late first round, second round kind of picks now. Like from your observation, are we at a point now where that is a real change in the talent pool that we should start to expect, where the international players they're starting to see the real payday at that level being NIL versus EuroLeague or the other leagues out there?
What do you mean in the talent pool for the draft or in the NCAA?
Well, it's shifting the talent pool where ordinarily it seems like a lot of those players would be making them they would be trying to fast track themselves into the draft, but now it seems like they don't necessarily need to do that anymore because of NIL.
Yeah, and I think that's a great thing. And I mean, if you I've heard some people say, and even I at first kind of thought this, but if you think about it some more, I mean, the same guys are all going to eventually enter the league, right? More or less, maybe some emerge and some drop off in the NCAA, but more or less, they're still all going to end up in the league. So it shouldn't really over time change things, right? If you think about it, you understand what I mean?
Yeah, definitely won't change it on the NBA side. I suppose it's definitely a benefit to NCAA ball because
yeah.
I think it's one. And you probably know this better than me. There's been a number of prospects, right, that decide to withdraw from the draft and go back.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, a huge number. And just I think right now, this year in particular, there's a huge market that's really opened up for NIL, where teams seem to be paying huge exuberant amount to players and NIL. That I'm not sure how long that will last. I mean, I'm hopeful that players will be able to continue to make money and stuff, but I'm a little bit mildly skeptical that perhaps this will start to drop off in the coming years, because I don't know how sustainable it all is. But yeah, either way, it's definitely still going to be here to stay, of course, NIL. And it's I think it's good for the NBA, also for teams, because not having to figure out these young players that are still kind of figuring things out and developing their games. I think that was I kind of had a Twitter thread about this in the last decade, where we saw some kind of inconsistencies in the way teams were drafting, and people kind of think that teams are getting worse at drafting. But the truth is, teams are getting good at drafting so fast that we thought that they could now start to effectively evaluate 18, 19-year-olds outside the elite, which is back in the day, 10, 15 years ago, in prior all NBA history prior to that, it was only elite 19-year-olds that were entering the draft. But in the last 10 years, now it's the second round is full of one and dones too. So of course the NBA is going to have a lot of trouble evaluating guys that are that young and are not the very high level prospects. So I think not having to do that anymore, and these guys now could just stay in school and make money from NIL, I think definitely helps teams tremendously. And it's I'm guessing something Adam Silver really encouraged the NCAA to do as far as NIL.
Yeah, to me, it's been nothing but win-win for both the NBA, but then definitely NCAA, because I think it's just even in this year's NCAA tournament, I thought it was some of the most high-level basketball start to finish in the tournament in years. It's funny, as many people have the nostalgia kicks or nostalgia takes come out 90s NBA basketball was the best one. I'm not that person. I don't feel that way, but I do feel that way actually about NCAA basketball. I think
Hmm.
there was a golden era of basketball in the '90s with NCAA basketball that
Nah,
has not been replicated, and I don't think ever will be replicated. But I think NIL will actually help us get back to some more of that level of competition that we had in the '90s, where like NCAA '90s NCAA basketball used to be a legitimate minor league for the NBA because you had superstar talent in colleges
right.
and they
Yeah.
played at least for like 2 seasons. It wasn't the one and done stuff. I mean, like the best players might have left after like the sophomore year.
Yeah.
Certainly, there's some like the best stars, like they weren't sticking around past junior year. But like it used to be that like the best players in the world play 2 or 3 seasons of college ball. I do think there's some benefit of it, like having those few seasons to work things out, as opposed to like all these one and dones that go into the league, and there's the development coach, and we have to like they have to play through a few years of development. I can remember when like Shaq came into the league, and Shaq was Shaq. We weren't talking about in like 4 or 5 years, we might see what Shaq is like. Shaq showed up as Shaq.
Well, Shaq is Shaq though. Like Wemby showed up as Wemby too. Or like Luka
Yeah.
showed up as Luka.
Well, I mean, there's still some of those, but like I suppose there was a wider distribution of like talent that came into the league, and it wasn't so much like, yeah, we're gonna have to wait 3 or 4 years for them to like get to like
Right. Yeah. But yeah, that's
like a mean level of contribution to the NBA.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree 100%. And I'm glad you're saying this because, yeah, I've had like some people like not be skeptical, but they kind of were unsure and surprised that this was the case. And I was surprised that this is not like well known. So, as having, watched like 90s college basketball, it's great that you're telling the people that I have somebody backing me up on this.
I mean, those were like, again, these all were like quote unquote kids back in the day that were bona fide box office superstars before they got to the league. And I think that was great for their career and their development, because they were already being put on like high leverage situations. They were like they were on national TV. Like I think that's something that went like the NCAA lost once the one and done framework took place, because it just took so much, I think, valuable development out of like the best talents, like development experience, to where instead they're getting dropped in. And I know like, then the D League came along, which then became the G League, but it's not the same. Like nobody's watching G League games.
Yeah. And yeah. I mean, whether it's somebody, I think just the style of play there is kind of strange, for lack of a better term. Yeah. I don't know how always conducive it is to development, but definitely like I hear people say, and this was like my original thought when I first started like doing research on like prospect development evaluation, is like you would think guys develop most ideally in the NBA, where you have the most best coaches and trainers available, the best players to play against. But in reality, what we've seen as far as results, that's not at all true. Like there's a really high number of players that stayed in school and developed much better than the guys like a Josh Christopher who left and he's out of the league now. Like imagine he stayed at Arizona State until he was a junior, senior. He'd probably be one of the best players in the NCAA and possibly getting a top 10 pick right now or whatever.
Yeah, I think like I mean, we're talking about the 25 draft, but like I mean, just I'm thinking like now I'm thinking back to last year. The player that I was probably the highest on personally in the 24 draft, it was Dalton Connect, because of what I saw him do in the 24 tournament. And I know that like there's the play of like we want to get these one and done guys because we want to play for upside and we want to try to like hit home runs. I think that's fine, that's good. At the same time, like why not like maybe it's time also to start recognizing that like a player who's played 2-3 years in college and actually is contributing and can like do like real NBA things, and we're seeing it on film and tape, like maybe that's a worthwhile player to invest in too in draft. Yeah, maybe like the ceiling is lower, but the finals just showed us like depth matters, and so like yeah, you should play for upside, but just like somebody with a stock portfolio, like yeah, you're gonna do some upside investing, but you want some surefire blue chips in there that's are gonna be solid.
Yeah, I mean, I would be lying. I was definitely a big Connect critic to some degree, but I will say to his credit, like one thing I liked about him as a prospect, he had like that like growth spurt, and guys that have that like tend to kind of take some time to adjust physically and learn how to be have ideal coordination in like their newfound frame. Yeah, I think that kind of gave him a little bit more of a promising trajectory than another guy of the same age and ability. Yeah, oh, and also I liked the combine results were really good for him, and I just thought he was kind of an underrated athlete. So yeah, there's definitely things to like about him, but I'd be lying if I said I was like a huge fan of his. But yeah, I could see your point definitely makes sense.
Yeah, and to be fair, like you probably perhaps there's more of his body of work that you saw throughout his college career, whereas I just saw him in that tournament run that Tennessee had last year. So
Right.
So like that for me, only seeing that, but seeing seeing his ability to score from different spots on the floor, do it off movement as well, shoot, but then also get to the rim and finish. Those things when I saw that, I'm like, oh, this guy is like an NBA wing now. And
Yeah.
coincidentally, he's playing by Purdue Boilermakers. I was legitimately feared that he was going to stop us from going to the Final Four because
Okay.
he was cooking. I have to
Yeah.
give him credit for that.
Yeah. No, but yeah, you're right. He's definitely an NBA. I mean, I think he could come in and get like rotation minutes, no problem for almost any team. And yeah, I definitely can't say much about that.
Yeah, I mean, it sucked that Charlotte Hornets couldn't get that Mark Williams trade to stick because that might have been something interesting to see connected
Yeah.
in LaMelo together.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's finish on this because I mean you started talking about some of that, but I think this is beneficial just for the audience at large and like with us with this show, right? What
Yeah.
I aim to do is like is but talk about hoops, talk about it in a fun way, but also like leave people with something that's informative, potentially inspiring, or just like something that helps people learn something that they didn't know before. I just want to kind of give you the floor because I mentioned up top like I really consider you to be like a guru as far as like basketball analysis, and I mean you do like a just a voluminous amount of work in terms of like analysis, analytics, scouting, all of this. I want to give you the floor just to talk about as in depth as you want to go, or you feel like you can go, of like just your whole, I guess, philosophy and process of evaluating NBA talent. And I'd say that I think that's important, or like it's useful for the audience because I have a lot of friends, and there's a lot of people I got to know on Twitter, just like you. I mean, there are a lot of people in the internet that love to talk about basketball. Some
Yeah.
people are just getting started with. Some people have been doing it forever. It's different levels of knowledge and stuff. But like, I think someone like you, where you've been so in depth and like you've seen it at different levels. Like, can you just share like your wisdom of like some of the fundamentals or like some of the basic things, like what is Grib's basics of like how do you
Yeah.
evaluate NBA talent?
Yeah. I'll try my best. It's like hard to like really
And plug wherever you can. Whatever is too much, definitely plug other stuff. Because I know you got like a ton of stuff, and I'll plug it for you right now. Like your Patreon is solid. Everybody go join Mike's Patreon after this as well.
Thank you so much. Yeah, patreon.com/Mike Grib number 8. So I think I just came into like I love evaluating the draft always, obviously, blah blah blah. And at one point I decided to really start trying to take it seriously, like make it a career. And obviously we all know like the results of the draft historically have not been like super consistent, even for like NBA teams to media quote unquote experts to like anybody. Like nobody has like a great grasp on this. So I really wanted to like, get down to the nitty gritty and, like really figure out where we could improve and get better at this. And that's kind of been like my overarching goal, to, be as good of an evaluator as I could be, and also like leave, the process of evaluating prospects at kind of a better place than I found it in. I think after a few years and really, getting, understanding and a hold of things a little bit more, I realized that what's kind of missing, if I say it in the most kind of like broad, basic way, is we don't do enough of like hard science research, like really going and figuring out what is the best way to project a shooter. Not just like saying, oh, I think shooters that I don't know, shoot off 2 feet are the ones that are the best, or shooters shouldn't use their thumb, or it's like, well, what makes you say this? Like a lot of really like anecdotal evidence for a lot of the opinions and kind of truisms and things like that we hear from in the scouting community so often. So I wanted to do more of that, is like kind of actually like doing, maybe not professional like academia level studies for everything, but having like more of a factual basis and analytical kind of approach to figuring out what are the best, at least in broadly speaking, ways to evaluating various traits.
Yeah, I like that. And there's a follow-up question I have for you, and I should say, like, this is fresh on my mind because this was like a revelation I had from a previous narratives per possession guest, Ryan Kaminsky, who has a great podcast, Learning Basketball. He had actually, and I think Ro is in the group chat, like the group chat we have.
I'm sure.
So Ro and Ryan Kaminsky had a great podcast conversation on Ryan's podcast that it really gave me a revelation where I ended up writing this thread about the eye test, because what I realized is in basketball analysis, the best analysis that I've found that's been helpful or informative to me is it's analysis that is both quantitative and qualitative. Absolutely. And the qualitative piece of it, that's why I realized, like, it made me, and so the aha I had was like, oh, everybody talks about eye test, but like, I feel like when it's done in a lazy sense, people are just saying like, oh, I just don't understand numbers, or I don't understand statistics, which, I'm not trying to be judgmental, but that's just how I receive it. Like, whereas I think there is a productive type of eye test where it's like, you can talk about it, like, if you set forth like these are the qualities that I value in basketball and basketball players. If you can put that into an organized statement and
exactly,
like use that as like a consistent grading framework, I think that's like, that was the missing piece for me, because I think I've leaned a lot on stats and analytics as far as like when I've publicly talked about basketball, because that resonates with me. I have an educational background. I have some level of statistics education. So like, I understand that. But then like listening to Ro and Ryan talk about eye tests and actually in terms of, I'm pretty sure it was about draft analysis, it helped me realize like, oh, like, just like you're saying, Grib, like the hard science or the empirical evidence piece of it, we're always going to need that. And at the same time, we should be able to like mate it with, the qualities that we see on film, on the court, in the player.
Yeah, but even those qualities, we could like go back and like, or go into the, in the future and start checking like, oh, does this quality really consistently, stand up to scrutiny and like work out in general? And of course, like, don't get me wrong, these are individual human beings. So, everybody's different at the end of the day, and what works for one guy may not work for the rest. I definitely agree with that. Don't get me wrong. But, we could only do so much in, figuring out that kind of variance and chance. We just, especially as outsiders, I'm not behind the scenes in all these games. I'm not a head coach or, a general manager or whatever. So especially for us, but even I think for most NBA scouts, we just got to figure out what are the best methods for various situations or problems. What are the best solutions? And tend to go with those. And sometimes you're going to be wrong, unfortunately. But yeah, to know what is the answer is kind of a lot of what I've been seeking these last few years, along with building like a really consistent, as much as possible, foolproof framework to evaluation, like you were talking about.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's amazing, and like that's. It's like just seeing the body work that you continue to put out there, and then like just holding yourself to that standard to where like you are doing legitimate research in that way. I mean, I don't know if you're trying to get a PhD out of it per se, but it's still legitimate research.
No, I have actually an idea to publish. Sorry for interrupting you, but I want to publish a research. This work I'm doing right now on all the big boards, collecting everybody's. So eventually, I don't know how feasible it is, but I'll start looking into maybe making into actual research paper out of it.
I go for it. I mean, I think it's good because it's like I personally find it cool because I mean that's innovation in the most fundamental sense, and there's so much. Again, there's such a wide audience that has grown that wants to consume basketball, talk about basketball. I think the creative community in general has given people a lot of license to where they want to be able to talk about basketball and share their opinions, which is fine. What's even cooler on top of that is like if we collectively advance our knowledge of basketball in ways where it's like we all can like have perhaps like some generally accepted ways of like how we derive insights about basketball.
Yeah, and right. I mean like I really want to talk about this because I'm so excited about the project. I was just referring to the big board. So that's kind of like what I'm really looking forward to because we're all, in the especially draft community, we're making these big board rankings. And, what's the point of doing it? Obviously, because you want to, be as good as possible at projecting and, but nobody ever goes back or hardly anybody goes back and checks who actually did the best with their rankings. Why haven't we done that? Why isn't this out there more? So, yeah, I've been collecting big boards, if some of the listeners don't know, for like the last at least since 2020. And, I have hundreds of them now. And now we're going to go back along with my friend Max and start analyzing and seeing who had the most best results and, maybe try to learn something from their, strength.
I would be remiss if I didn't ask at least like now I have to reveal a little bit of stat there. Like I'm curious, like, are you going to do like any sort of like regression analysis across that, or like how I guess what are some of the methods you're going to apply to analyze that historically?
So, yeah, there's I don't know if you've heard of it, but like I'm sure like a pick value, like it's the one I'm using is Kevin Pelton's. It's like how do you explain? It's like a thing that he made, like how much on average is the first pick worth, relative to the rest, and the second pick, the third pick, so for helping teams trade picks among each other. But if you think about it, kind of fits right into this. So if I put those pick values into whoever we decide is number 1, number 2, number 3, in in a redraft, and then compare it to what the people's big boards were back in the day, that's how we're gonna do it. But as far as how we're gonna decide who's the best for the redraft, we're gonna do it in various ways. One I'm doing right now on my Patreon is we're doing a redraft, like our personal opinion, me and my patrons. And then also we're gonna use like statistics like EPM or RAPM and based on that as well.
That's awesome, man. I'm definitely looking forward to it. And I give you just applause because like I know this is a grind for you as well. I mean, like the amount of,
but I love it. I love doing this.
But you're passionate about it. I think that's it's incredibly it's an incredibly cool contribution to just basketball in general. So I just want to give you kudos for that.
Yeah, that's amazing to hear. Like that's like all I want to hopefully people get that from talking to me or whatever.
Yeah. Well, hey Mike, I can't thank you enough, man. I think this has been an awesome chat, and I feel like
I want to keep going, but I got so much to do right now.
You got a ton to do. I don't want to detract you too much more from that because I'm sure it's gonna be a big day tomorrow with all the big boards.
Yeah, absolutely.
Big puns intended. Look, yeah, thank you. I want to give you just give you the floor again. Definitely plug away. You got the Patreon, you got the big board project. What else? And certainly, where can people find you?
Yeah. Just Twitter /Mike Grib 8. Probably you have like my name in the description or whatever or something like that. Yeah, and just if you like the content or you want to help out, please sign up to the Patreon. But if you're unable, definitely don't. And what's it called? You could just check out the big boards. Tawny Park Metrics is the website, but you'll see it up on my Twitter. I'll be posting and kind of I guess marketing in it in the next coming days.
Cool. Well, yeah, appreciate you for that. And then just for everybody, definitely like, subscribe, comment on this video. Subscribe to Narratives Per Possession YouTube channel. Join our Patreon community as well out there. Follow us on X as well. And the whole goal is just to keep building up a cool basketball community where we can talk about hoops in quality ways like this. So, Mike, again, really appreciate you, man, joining tonight. Love to have you back. Love to talk about like a lot of different things. Feel like
we could go for hours next time.
Just go for hours
after the draft. After the draft,
I have to have you I'm not gonna I want you back for draft, but at the same time, like I can just tell, I need to have you when it's not draft and we can go super deep into stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Oh, cool. All right, man. With that, I will sign us off here. Thank you again, Mike. Thank you, all the narrators. Please enjoy the draft, and let's keep talking hoops.